Good morning, everyone. I am Mahala Clayton. I am a program manager for Patronicity, and I would just like to welcome you and thank you for joining part 3 of our webinar series, Community Crowdfunding, Learn from the Experts. For those of you who don't know, Patronicity is a civic-based crowdfunding platform. We run placemaking programs with sponsors in 3 states, and today we're going to be focusing on our placemaking work within Michigan. We have some great leaders here with us today that have taken part in the Public Spaces Community Places program. We're going to talk with them today and learn what they have to share about their experience with crowdfunding in their community. They are definitely experts, and we are very fortunate to have 3 powerful women who took part in this program. So Public Spaces Community Places was created with the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, 4 years ago. We've had 173 successful projects and counting. We have granted 5.2 million, which was leveraged to 6.1 million raised by your communities across Michigan. It's a very wonderful thing to take part of. I am the project manager and program manager, as I mentioned before, and I'm very happy to be talking to 3 of our leaders in that movement today. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Rob St. Mary, who is our Communications Court Director and Director of Outreach at Patronicity.
Thank you, Mahala. I'm very excited to take the time today to speak to 3, as Mahala said, people who worked with us: Deb Kohler, and also Britt Keene and Jean Lamoureux. And I'm very excited to start off with Deb and to talk about her project, and also to get a bit more about the village of Lawrence. So I guess to start off, Deb, can you give us who you are, what you do, and a little bit about what your project was?
I am the school social worker at a school with the Van Buren Intermediate School District in Van Buren County, but we have programs and our main offices housed in Lawrence, Michigan. And Lawrence is a pretty small village. It's a rural community, and it's the traditional one traffic light town, located just how about halfway between Lake Michigan and Kalamazoo on I-94, and it is proud to claim that we finally got a Dollar General a few years ago. So we're growing a little bit. We've had a downtown eating establishment refurbished and opened in the past year. So there's been a little things here and there on the move. But one of the things that we were proud to work on with this project, we meaning the school I work at, which is the Burt Goins Learning Center. It is a school for severely to moderately impaired students. They have impairments that range in cognitive skills or physical disabilities, and they are severe enough that it prevents our students from attending their local neighborhood schools. So our school was happy to work on a new playground for our students, but also it is open to the Lawrence community and anybody else surrounding Lawrence that would like to stop by and play on the playground with their children and families. They are most welcome. We are very proud of the project. It stemmed from actually one staff member approaching our principal of the school at the time with the fact that while we have handicapped students at our school, our playground was not handicap accessible. It was very difficult to try and push a student in a wheelchair through wood chips to the wheelchair swing, for instance. And oftentimes our students in wheelchairs or with mobility issues would just stand on the sideline and watch their peers play on the playground. And obviously that's not what learning and attending school is all about. So our principal at the time, when it was pointed out to her, kind of launched a committee. It was a small committee, and they did a few things here and there and did a couple of fundraising things. But as they researched handicap accessible playground equipment and playground equipment that is accessible to people of all abilities, they found out it's quite expensive. They proceeded with polls being taken among the teachers as to what kind of playground equipment would be most used by our students. And so that progressed, but again, the fundraising just kind of lagged along. I jumped on board, and we got some more energetic people on the committee, and things started moving forward. And then our principal was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and she passed away within 11 months of that diagnosis. So while we were kind of on a full steam ahead project to get done before her passing, that didn't help it. That didn't work out, and it kind of actually diminished some of the committee members' steam. So some of us trudged along and in Janice's memory, and then we also were able to team up with TV star and home improvement guru Carter Osterhaus and his foundation called Carter's Kids. But our big push for our final fundraising was actually connecting with the MEDC and Patronicity and launching our campaign on the website, which Mahala helped me so feverishly to get up and running in just a matter of days, because we were on a time crunch and wanting to get this playground built and up and running in time for the students' return to school last fall in 2017. And with this wonderful campaign of every dollar being matched, we were able to proceed with that schedule and reach our goal of not only the $50,000 we had set, which then worked out to over $100,000 towards our playground fund, but also reaching our goal of having the playground up and ready and going for the first day of school, and then also open to the village of Lawrence and any surrounding communities thereafter. So that's kind of a very, very brief synopsis of a project that was several years in the making.
Well, Deb, thanks so much. And going to move on to Britt from Grass Lake. But you'll be back in a few minutes, and we'll get into some of the particulars of what happened in Lawrence and how that all came together for you. But Britt, would just love to hear a bit about you and what you do in Grass Lake. Give us a little bit about your community and then the project.
I'm Britt Keene. I'm a resident of Grass Lake. I wear many hats within that community. I own a small coffee shop. I am the executive director of a nonprofit museum, and I am the board chair for our Downtown Development Authority. I had moved to the community about 2 years ago and kind of jumped in headfirst into everything I could kind of get my hands on to be more involved. And being involved in all of those facets, I realized that there was a pretty huge need for something or some place for events to happen within our community. And I'd heard of a lot of talks about potential, events parks and events pavilions going in. We do have some rental and lease spaces within the community people would utilize. And then a lot of times when things would happen, our community would just close down the main street of town, which seems like a great idea. But really, really affected lots of businesses downtown, really affected people traveling through the community, and they would just bypass the community completely, leaving those businesses null and void. So we started looking at spaces that were good for us that we could move into for this events park. Was the idea that we had started with. And then once we transitioned from that idea to reality, we had met somebody that just wanted to donate the property to us, which was pretty incredible. And then from there, we realized we needed a working budget and things like that. And because the property was donated, we decided that an enclosed facility would be better than just kind of a piece of land with a really great park on it. From there, I met with a couple people within the community who were really excited and eager to move forward with this. And they had some really great ideas themselves, and a lot of people with a lot of connections. And me being new to the community, I didn't have those connections of people that have been there for 20 or 30 years. And so from there, met with a lot of contractors to kind of develop an idea, took it to the village council, who completely loved the idea. And then really started working intricately with people around the community to ensure that those donations were there before we even hit go on our Patronicity campaign. And I had already known about Patronicity coming from the previous community that I lived in, where Cultivate Tap House had launched their own campaign pretty successfully. So I had known them from that, and then used them when I started my coffee shop to do more of a crowdsourcing for a startup. So then when we hit go, we had already had a pretty decent amount of the donations secured, and the rest is history. It was super successful. We were able to hit our goal, actually go a little over our goal with our full MEDC match. And it was pretty wonderful.
Sounds good. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing more about the details. Like I said, as for the experts, leaning on our three experts today to tell us how the campaigns went. And our third one is Jean. And Jean, just talking about the village of Middleville, I was hoping you could tell me a bit about you and the community, and then also a little bit about the project.
I'm Jean Lamoureux, and I was the village clerk at one time, and then I became the first director of the DDA when they decided to have the DDA have a coordinator type. And then we decided to trail going north, and we got significant funding. But then we got stopped by the Indiana bat. They nest in the trees by us. And we also got stopped by, we are along the river of the Thornapple. We're on the Thornapple River. And at one point, they thought it was an Indian burial ground. So we had the money sitting there, waiting for all the testing to be done. And finally, they decided if we took out some trees before the Indiana bats nested, we could build. And we had an archaeological survey done, and it was okay. And so 2 years later, we were given the go-ahead. Well, in that time, prices had jumped astronomically. And so we were short now over $100,000 to finish the trail, this 9/10 going north. So the council said, we're not going to spend any more money. So that was the end. But it was also an election year coming up. So I resigned from the DDA and ran for council, got on the council, and at the first council meeting that I was at, we voted again to see if we are going to finish the trail. And I personally said, I will find the money. So thank goodness I found Patronicity through the Michigan Trails Association. Said, there's this new group called Patronicity. You might want to check with them. And I was just ecstatic when I found out that there would be a matching program and we could do this. So I got the Thornapple Trail Association as the backer, and the rest is history. They actually raised the money, and we ended up with actually over $60,000 in the end. Money just kept pouring in. It was like it was meant to be, and it was just astronomical the way people gave money. So it was very exciting, and it still is very exciting.
Well, Gene, thanks so much for that overview. I want to kind of start with you in reference to what you were talking about with the Public Spaces Community Places program that we run with the MEDC here in Michigan, Patronicity. And what was it when you first heard about it that you thought, this might be the thing. This might be the program that can help make this project happen. What was it about it?
Well, we were kind of skeptical because we knew that, yeah, there are some big givers in Barry County where we live, but there's a lot of people that are very tight. Also, it's a bedroom community, it's a farming community, and people turn their pennies over many times before they spend them. So we didn't quite know what it was going to be, but what turned me on the most was when they made our video that showed why we needed this trail, and we were able to put that online. All of a sudden, we had money coming out of the woodwork. People were giving $1, $5. We love your trail. We want it to grow. And it just became, we were so unaware of how much we had impacted the community. And then we ended up having matching from, we didn't realize that a lot of companies match what their employees give. So like General Electric and Kellogg and the large major companies, if you give $100, they'll match $100, etc. So that's also very something brand new I didn't know.
Excellent. Well, Britt, as for yourself, you had some experience, as you said, both through a friend in the community and then also yourself working with Patronicity because we do non-matched crowdfunding for small businesses, artists, and community. But what was it about Public Spaces Community Places when you brought it to Grass Lake and said, look, I think this can help make it happen? What was it about that program?
The program itself is so exciting because of the matching opportunity. And then diving into that program a little bit more and working with MEDC, realizing how many resources are there, how many resources are just at our fingertips for becoming an RRC engaged community was huge. I feel like as small farming bedroom communities, a lot of us just kind of chase our tails trying to figure out how to make things work. And I don't think any of us were aware that there were such great opportunities and such great partnerships available through the MEDC and through the Public Spaces Community Places grants.
Now, Deb, much the same to you. You had talked about this had been something that the school had thought about doing. It was looking at pricing. You had received some help from outside organization. But what was it about Public Spaces Community Places that when you brought it forward and brought it to the community, you said, this can possibly help us do it?
Well, like some of the other experts have already mentioned, the fact that the dollars that were going to be given would be doubled was just a huge selling point. People love to hear that not only is their money going for a good cause, but the fact that it would then be doubled and have, double the power in helping the cause become a reality just was a great selling point, for our project. It really helped to motivate people, especially people on our committee, to get out of that, fundraising fatigue, because all of a sudden, there was new life, there was new energy to talk about the project and, inform a lot of people about the project. So it was just, fabulous to suddenly have this wonderful momentum going and to actually see, some of the higher ups in our organization now jumping on board and seeing that, we mean business and we want to reach our goal, and working through Patronicity and the Public Spaces Community Places, crowd granting, that, we were going to make it happen, and we did. We managed to pull it off in 6 weeks, and like I said earlier, raise over $50,000 and, meet our funding goal and move forward with the project. And we had a demo day and community build days within 2 weeks after meeting our goal.
That's great, and I love to hear that. I love how it's the community that really comes together around these projects. And I know there's a certain amount of work that has to come together before you even come to Patronicity, before you decide on public spaces, community places as a possibility for you. Deb, when you got to that place, when you sat down and you looked at the website and you started to put the idea in and start the campaign, talk to Mahala, as we talked about, who does such a great job running the Michigan program here. How was that process for you? Because I know some people may go, we're talking technological things here, and maybe some people might not be as technologically savvy. So, as for yourself, how was that process to get in, to apply, to move through all the way to the finish line?
Oh, geez. Funny you should mention that, some people aren't technologically savvy. That is me. I often refer to myself as being technology impaired. I'm still one of a few people that has a flip phone, so people often laugh at me and ask, when are you going to, get up to this century? But so if I really honestly think if I would have had the time and allowed myself the time to think about this undertaking of, oh my gosh, applying to be a part of this campaign and setting up a web page, that it probably would have been far more intimidating for me, but I didn't really have the time to do that, so I just jumped in with both feet. And again, it's not intimidating, and no one should be intimidated by it at all, because like I said, you're assigned a program manager or a consultant, and mine happened to be Mahala, and she just helped me every step of the way. Mahala, I don't know if you can hear me, but she could probably attest to the fact of how many times I called her and I emailed her and I called her and I emailed her, and she was there helping me along the way because we were on this time crunch and just to even get the website set up and live and active. But again, we did it, and I'm glad I didn't really have a lot of time to think about it, so I wouldn't become intimidated. But for all the people tuning in out there, I would tell them, don't be intimidated. If someone who still carries a flip phone can pull this off, you can pull this off.
Well, I love hearing that. And to me, I mean, when I look at what you've done in terms of your work, it just shows with that playground. And thinking about your past experience, Britt, obviously with Patronicity in two manners, as you were saying, you had a friend who came through, and then you used it yourself for Roaming Goat. Coffee and opportunity that you're doing there. How was this experience for you? I mean, we often talk about grants, and you got to fill out this form, and you got to wait, and all that stuff. I was just wondering, did Patronicity make that easier for you in terms of getting in and applying and sort of moving through the campaign?
So for us, it was a really wonderful relationship with Mahala. There were two other women working alongside me through this campaign. And as Deb said, neither of them are very tech savvy, so it was fun to kind of watch them experience this and get really excited about the simplicity of the process, and sharing it with other people in our community that were, again, not very tech savvy, and the simplicity of the process as they went through it. It was really great for us to and really easy for us to get moving. We did have a little hiccup when we first started with the MEDC match and having to be a redevelopment ready, engaged community. But joining that and becoming part of that was also incredibly easy once we just realized what it was. And the training through that was very great for us as well. And then all along the way, I mean, Mahala was there. Any questions we had, any hiccups, any concerns, anything like that, she was there to kind of swoop in and just fix the situation instantly for us. And explain too how to go through the process and how to go through the steps. So for me, I thought I had a pretty good handle on it from the start. And then quickly, having that first conversation with Mahala about launching our campaign for the Grass Lake Events Park and Pavilion, and understanding the value of that video was a big thing. And she helped us, plan out how we were going to do that and what we were going to do. And that was super wonderful. Is I think I don't remember, I think it was Deb who said it before, like how important that video was and how valuable that video was. And once we had that going and once we had that loaded, it was a super streamlined, simple process from there.
That's great to hear. And, I've said it before, and our two other experts have said it as well. I mean, it is that coaching. It's Mahala who runs the Michigan program. She does a great job making sure all of that is taken care of. And that really is a key part of the Patronicity process. I think that's the thing that really sets us apart from what any other platform or what anyone else is doing out there. So, Jean, as for yourself, walking through that process, deciding, right, public spaces, community places, we discussed already for you, and then coming in to apply. I mean, as someone who had been involved in city government over the years, I'm sure you're familiar with grants process with the state of Michigan. How did this sort of fare, and what was that process to get you through all the way to the finish line?
We were one of the first ones to go through Patronicity, and Mahala was excellent in advising us. And we the gentleman that came from their office to do the video was just astronomical. The way he asked the questions, he interviewed me, and then he cut and pasted my voice to go on that video to match what was on the video. So we truly had experts doing that. And like I said before, once that video was out on the website, it just the money started pouring in immediately. People were very anxious to finish the trail then after seeing that video. So I think that's the biggest point is using the right tools, and they know how to do that. Having been a former marketer and, knowing all of that, they just went beyond what I knew. They were so up to date and inspiring. They truly helped.
And Jean, I just kind of wanted to add on to that. I mean, you said it's like basically as soon as this campaign started, the community was there. You started to see that move forward. Was there any, concern on your part going forward? I mean, had you been raising before then? Were you worried about a little donor fatigue and going, this is a website?
Before we started, not knowing what the community would give, we had talked about setting the goal at 20,000, and we didn't dare do that because if we couldn't raise 20, we would not have a match. So we thought, well, we'll do 10 and see what happens. And, we ended up making, it turned out a CPA firm decided that it was their anniversary and they gave $5,000. And, all of a sudden we had people saying, oh, we want to do this. So prior to it, we were skeptical. And once we started, we knew there was no stopping. But the other thing that helped was MEDC putting out a press release. If MEDC puts out a press release, it goes to the major newspapers, and people still read newspapers yet. And if I put out a press release from Middleville, it will not make the major newspapers unless it's something very wrong or very bad or something. But so this was astronomical in getting people outside of our area also giving money.
I'm sure things are great in Middleville. I'm sorry, I don't know.
I know, but you understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, but Britt, I wanted to ask, leading up to that campaign and then before you started the campaign, I mean, how was that reaction? I mean, was there a concern, never done anything like this before?
For the other women I was working alongside, we had a couple conversations that were like, oh, can we really do this? Like, if we miss our mark and we don't get any of that match, like what does that mean? And where does that put us? And so we started, like putting foot to pavement and walking around the community and meeting with business owners. We had prepared like a little half sheet flyer. And so we started just walking door to door and talking to business owners and dropping off information and asking, how interested are you? How excited are you? What are you looking for? And it was very wonderful to see how many people in our community were so excited about the idea of having, this wonderful community park that could house our farmers market, that could house our music series, our movie nights, everything along those lines. And so as we started adding the numbers together, we realized very quickly with some contributions from the community that we were very well on our way there. And it was very exciting to see how many people were so invested in this and wanted this. So after that, I think we were ready to go. I think we just needed that community support and that knowledge that community support was there financially.
Sounds good. Deb, I'm amazed by the work that you've done because it is such a small community. I mean, it's less than 1,000 people. And I was wondering, when you went out to start this campaign, I mean, sure, there have been some discussion in the community, but what was the reaction when it started? Did you find the same? There was a little skepticism there until the ball started to roll?
Yeah, there was. Some of what I had, though, to work with in my back pocket was some funding that had come in, and I think Britt alluded to that too, that I knew of, some funding that had come in, and the nice thing about the Public Spaces, Community Places campaigning for a project is that you can draw upon donations and funding that had come in like 30 days prior to going live, your campaign going live. So I kind of had that in my back pocket, moving forward and pulling people into the idea of I was going for the gusto. I wanted to set our goal at $50,000, and I wasn't going to hear anything that we weren't going to make it. But yet I had these things in my back pocket to show them that, we had some donations, we had some memorials from Janice's funeral and things like that. So I kind of knew a little bit going in that we could meet the $50,000. However, I'm going to use Britt's word of I did run into a hiccup then. Once I had all this motivation and everything going from the community and even beyond our village of Lawrence, there was energy and things because the one valuable thing about Patronicity is setting up that website for us. We didn't have time to do a video, so our website was crucial in getting it out on social media, and immediately people within the Van Buren Intermediate School District were sending it all out, on Facebook and things like that. But one of the hiccups I ran into, which I wasn't aware of because I depended on someone else educating me about Patronicity and the MEDC, was that only the top amount any one donor can give you is a percentage of your goal. And with our $50,000 goal, that top amount that any one donor could pledge was $10,000, and a couple of the ideas I had in my back pocket were more than that. But even with only utilizing $10,000 of what some of the organizations wanted to give us, still with the momentum from the web page and getting that out to people, and even beyond the village of Lawrence, again, we were able to meet that $50,000 goal within 6 weeks.
That's great. And to just kind of continue that there, I mean, you're going through the process, you're running your campaign, and I'm sure before you get to that start point, you've had some great conversations with Mahala, and she's coached you on, here's some best practices. But, there's definitely a difference between, writing up a blueprint and a plan of what you think is going to happen, and then sort of what happens in the process. And was wondering what were some positives. It may be a negative of kind of that process for you. Maybe it didn't go as smoothly as you expected, or it went even better than you expected.
Oh gosh, I think, I think one of the negatives, and it was my own fault, was not reading completely and thoroughly the guidelines for myself. And Mahala, sent those to me and told me to read them and everything, and I did. I mean, I glossed over them, but again, I was kind of depending on someone else within our project to have read over them and verse me on them, because I was kind of running this project alone, because working in a school, staff does not work during the summer, and so our biggest push and the time I had to allot my personal time to the project was in the summer. So kind of feeling alone in the project, I was drawing upon people that I needed to help provide me with information, and that was at a critical point of, oh geez, donors can only give that a percentage of your goal. And so that was probably maybe a negative thing, but I mean, I can't say it's negative, because oh my gosh, they could give up to $10,000 and it was going to be doubled. So, I guess the negative part was on my back of not reading and thoroughly educating myself about all the guidelines and all the requirements. But, looking back on it, that's something that I really did learn. Otherwise, I mean, we all spoke about many positives, and I guess the greatest positive is just being able to work with Patronicity, who is very versed in, running campaigns and fundraising and things like that, and looking at large dollar amounts of funding, because, you can have your bake sales, you can, have, item sales and sell candles or wrapping paper or whatever, and those are good and those are wonderful, but when you're looking at a major goal, our overall goal for our fully handicap accessible playground was $200,000. And so when you're looking at a major goal like that, having a bake sale and making $50 is great. That's $50 towards that goal, but going through the public spaces, community places, and MEDC and Patronicity really gave us that huge funding to, put us well into our project and making our playground a reality in a short time.
Britt, as for yourself, plan it out, go through the process. What did you see as some of the aspects of what worked really well, and maybe a few bumps along the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that worked really well, or one of the things that surprised me the most, were how engaged our community was. We had several large donations right off the bat, and that was really exciting, and that kept us really moving forward in a very positive manner. We didn't hit any hiccups during the process, but prior to the process, as I had mentioned before, we did hit the hiccup of not being an RRC engaged community. But in retrospect, that was a better thing to learn through all of the MEDC's redevelopment ready community program, and now be an engaged community with that. That's benefited us as a community in whole in a very broad spectrum in a pretty short time. Other positives that we had, I think it got more people into our community. As I said before, we're a rural bedroom community, pretty old farming community as well. And a lot of people didn't really make an effort to come downtown, because I heard a lot of times, well, what is down there? Like, why would I go downtown? Things like that. So I think, breaking ground with this, moving forward, moving our farmers market into that space, moving our music in the park into that space, were all really positive across the board for our community, which was obviously the end goal. But I didn't realize it was going to happen so quickly in such a positive light.
That's great. And Jean, as for yourself, going through that, planning it and going through it, what did you see as some positives that came up, and maybe a speed bump?
The positives were, of course, as I mentioned before, that once the press release was out And once the video was done, it just exploded like fireworks, and the money came in. But then we all of a sudden had to make sure that we had a good spreadsheet to keep track of what was going on. I am computer literate, so that took a lot of time to build that. And then we had to make sure that we had thank you notes in place, all the little things that you have to do to make your campaign work take time and take volunteers. And it was, I guess we hadn't been prepared as much as we thought we were. And so we needed to do all those little things to make it all work. And of course, then having our big thermometer outside the building, so people by the trail seeing how the campaign was growing, and putting that on Facebook and keeping it alive. All those kind of things, like I said, take time and volunteers. And you have to, I think we should have thought ahead of time about all those things. And all of a sudden you're stuck, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. So that was the only little hiccups, I guess.
Just to pick up on that, Jean, last question before we go to the questions for those who are also on the call. We've talked a lot about the process, what was going on in the community, creating the page, the assistance that you received from Mahala and Patronicity going forward. And I was wondering what you've seen as project impacts. So the trail's been connected, it's done. What have you seen because of that within the community?
Our community came closer together because of the whole thing. At the dedication, we made sure that those that had given, if they so wished, their name was in that program, and everyone that gave over a certain amount has their name on the plaque that is now displayed with their permission. So, and of course, MEDC is right up at the top, and the Michigan Economic Development Group. They're right at the top of the whole thing. But it really brings a sense of pride to the whole community that we can do this together, and it takes a village to make it all work, and it did. So we're quite proud of that.
That's great. And I love hearing those kind of stories about how communities come together over these projects, because obviously it is a community project and it's a community good. And I was thinking for yourself, Britt, what have you seen in that way? And maybe maybe you've seen ripple effects to other places or other things within the community as an impact.
Yeah, I think I think what Jean was saying is a very true statement. The community bonding that's happened over building this space and now having this wonderful community place and space that people can go. And definitely some things that I didn't think would happen were just, extra foot traffic on Wednesdays downtown. Because we do our farmers market in the events pavilion and within the park itself. It's pretty close to downtown. It's just one street off. And as a business owner, just off Main Street, I see so much more foot traffic. We've expanded our hours because of foot traffic and joined in on the community in that aspect a little bit more. The events that are being held now at the location are pretty wonderful in themselves. We just wrapped up a 2-day music festival, community music festival that was a fundraiser for 6 different local area nonprofits. And we had some pretty large bands play at that, which was really exciting and a really great way to bring new people to our community and showcase our community in a very positive light and have this really great place for it all to happen as well. We're expanding what we're using that park for as well, renting it out for wedding rentals, other, birthday parties, things like that. So it is a really nice place too to have for people to come and be able to utilize that space. I think that the ripple effects have been totally positive for business owners and community members alike.
That's great. And, you can see it with a trail. Obviously, that's a physical connection. You can see it in a place like a shed in that park that brings the farmers market. But Deb, as for yourself, when you're talking about an inclusive playground, how have you seen it in terms of connecting the community through this campaign and the after effects?
We definitely have seen a lot of play going on in the playground, not only, by our students with their different disabilities, because now they do have a fully handicap accessible playground, but also by, the community, children and families coming out to play on the playground. My gosh, before we could even get it completely constructed, we had families coming to play on it, and unfortunately I had to shoo them away at times because we were working with drying cement and things like that, and we had to have a special surface put in that made the equipment wheelchair accessible, so there was still work being done on that, and families were just so eager to come with their children and play on the playground. So once it was officially open, we saw that traffic increase. We continue to see that traffic increase. In fact, I've been told by several of my coworkers who have driven by on weekends, and you can see the playground from the road, that there can be up to 30 to 40 people out on the playground at once on the weekends, with families bringing their children on over. So that's very exciting to know that we are here and our community is utilizing this great playground that we all came together to create. Another exciting thing is that we do have a phase 2 of the playground project underway in order to fully complete our former principal's dream, was to have outdoor exercise equipment included on the playground, which we made that a phase 2 because that equipment is quite expensive, yet through the crowdfunding and the exposure that gave us, we have been able to secure enough money for that. So we have phase 2 in the process now and planning for hopefully a fall installation. And on top of that, one of our bigger donors to the, to our Patronicity crowdfunding approached me and wanted me to write a grant at their state level of their organization, which again, intimidating, but I went for it. I requested $45,000 and I was awarded $40,000. So out of all of this came more money, like Jean said, out of the woodwork. And so now not only are we going to complete phase 2 to complete Janice's dream, but now we're going to complete Deb's dream, which is another zip track for our students. They love the zip track, but they don't like waiting in line for it because it takes a little bit of time to transfer a student from a wheelchair onto the special bucket seat. It's actually a dual zip track, so we do have another line that our able-bodied students can jump on a disc and ride it back and forth. But so we're pretty excited about all that. Students are not aware of it yet. They'll be informed when they come back to school, so it's a nice surprise for them. And I'm crunching numbers actually as we speak, and met with our playground company again last week. And I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but we may even have enough money left to put in another 4 or 6 seat swing set for our students in the community. So, our playground is growing.
That's great. I love how a community will build on those successes. And that is what I think that we've seen through all 3 projects. And thank you, Deb, for sharing that, Britt and Jean as well, for showing that this is more than just a campaign to raise money. This is more than just to build something. It really is about the community and how the community builds from one success to the next, sees these little changes, such as Britt was saying, Grass Lake, Wednesday, who knew that there would be more foot traffic, got to add extra hours to the business. Or in your case, Deb, adding more opportunities and putting in for more grants and expanding the opportunities that are there. And that's ultimately what I believe that we're trying to do here at Patronicity, and through our sponsors like the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, with Public Spaces Community Clubs, or with Mass Development in Massachusetts, where you can learn more about Commonwealth places, or Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority in Indiana with creating places. It really is about that connection. It really is about creating those projects that lead to community betterment and connecting the community and creating great things for all. So to take us home, I'm going to send you back to Mahala.
Yes, thank you everyone for sharing your practices, and it's so great to revisit these projects and hear about how they're being taken on by the community. But one thing that I wanted to ask about from Jean and from Deb, starting with you, Jean, is there any stories that you've heard from the community or users of the space that you love in particular, like a really great story that you may have heard about the use of the space itself or the trail?
Okay, there was a lady that gave money that I knew didn't have any money to give. And so I ran into her one day at the grocery store and I said, "We were so honored that you gave money towards the trail." And she said, "I had to do that." She said, "I walk the trail all the time and I just feel God's nature on that trail. And I just was led to give you this money." So those kind of things just, make it all worthwhile, all the work you've done, to know that it's affected people that way.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thanks, Jean. What about you, Deb? Have you heard any stories from users of the space or from the community that have really touched you or impacted you?
Oh my gosh, I have heard many, many stories because people know that I work so hard on the project and continue to work hard on the project that I'm kind of the go-to person for stories and letting me know that all the efforts were definitely worth it. Probably one of the most heartwarming stories is one of our students, before the playground was made handicap accessible, he's in a wheelchair. He has muscular dystrophy, Duchenne's muscular dystrophy, which is quite quickly debilitating for him, and he one day was out playing per se on our not handicap accessible old playground and used a little divot of mud puddle on the sidewalk as something to play with, and he was rolling his wheelchair through it. And just like I said, it was just a little divot of a little mud puddle saying, "I splash you, Deb. I splash you, Deb." And that was his mode of fun while the rest of his classmates were out playing on the playground. And of course I played around with him, and he wasn't really splashing me because there wasn't much water there to splash. But wow, was that just a trigger for me that everything we're doing is for a good, obviously good cause. And then to see him the first day of school being able to roll himself in his wheelchair up to a big structure on our playground, and off that structure is what's called a rock and raft, and he could wheel himself onto that rock and raft, and people could push him back and forth, and he with his peers that were able-bodied and sitting on the rock and raft with him. It's just so touching, and people bringing me pictures and showing him being transferred from his wheelchair onto the zip track and having that sensation of just flying through the air. I can only imagine. I don't spend my days in a wheelchair, but I can only imagine the sensation and freedom of being able to fly through the air and have your classmates doing it beside you, and you can play right along beside them. That's just so heartwarming, and I've just had so many wonderful stories like that, and awesome pictures shared with me that I could go on forever, but I know we don't have all that time in the world.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That is a beautiful, beautiful story. So I just want to come back again and talk about the program. If you do have a project in Michigan or Massachusetts or Indiana that you know of that is a public placemaking program or project, please do connect with us at Patronicity. the grants are there, and we are looking to make those great community ideas into beautiful spaces. One thing that Jean touched on that I just wanted to follow up with is that we don't offer the MEDC video production team anymore. Projects can make their own videos, and the MEDC did make a wonderful video guide of how to, just for the Public Spaces Community Places program. So we do have a great video that will help you through that process. And as always, I will be there if there is anything you need, and give you the best tips and tricks on how to make a successful video and have a successful campaign. I just wanted to thank everyone for attending, and I hope you have a wonderful day.